go ahead and feed it onto our mandrel. So I'm going to take it really slow because it's possible some of this can blow out. Just turning it, it can get brittle and it'll just shatter and everything will come right off of the brass tube. So I'm going to take it a little bit slower, and I will use this carbide tip, which is pretty much worn out, but still usable. I work tiny bits at a time, because if I try to take too much, it'll shatter. I'm hitting some of those turquoise stones and I can feel it giving me more resistance. And there's that piece. And you can see I lost a lot more than I really anticipated. So I'm going to see if I can find that piece. And we'll try to make something of it. I found the piece that shattered off. I'm going to go ahead and put it back in place. And I refilled my small bottle of CA glue from that larger bottle that I just bought. So we're just going to place this right back where it was. And once this is fully turned and sealed with CA glue, it's going to be one solid hard piece, so we don't really have to worry about the cracks or the breaks. You do have to make sure that it gets back into the right spot. And this is where sometimes I get my fingers dirty. Why don't we just hit it with a little bit of accelerator. There. Instant hard. Let's just make sure we got a nice solid glue. Alright, so that void you can see is right here where we were looking at earlier before I started turning it. And I kind of expected this, which is not a big deal. That's why I have all the little scrap pieces. I'm just going to go ahead and fill in some of that. A couple pieces that look like it might be the right size. Look at that. That seems to fill in pretty good right there. Usually I can, this CA glue is so thin that I can usually just drop it right on top and it penetrates everything. And we'll just tap it with a little CA and see how it bubbles up. When we do our final product, we definitely don't want that bubbling to occur, and you can see that's pretty solid. I'm going to turn this down, and then there's going to be some more gaps that I'll fill in again. And I'm going to step aside just in case there's a little wet CA glue on there. I doubt it, but you don't want that stuff flying in your face or on your clothes. It had a little excess accelerator on there. And you can see that didn't work out really well. Let's try this again. Small area under there is vulnerable to being knocked out. So I'm going to brace it up a little bit and glue it. See if we can fill that little spot. Use my handy dandy dovetail saw. There, that'll help make that a little more solid. And let's see if we can use some of this to fill in here. Find something that's got a good fit. I'm going to go ahead and continue filling in some of these gaps. Alright, we are ready to continue. Alright, now we're going to do a little final shaping here before we start filling in all the gaps that are left behind with turquoise again. I'm going to do a little cleaning on my tool. This chisel's about had its days completed. It's getting pretty short. But it's because I keep the tool sharp most of the time. Nice sharp tool. Now I can get a good smooth finish. In many cases I'll have a little more of a gradual curve here. In this case I'm going to put a cigar band, a wrapper on it, and sometimes those wrappers get a little tall. And if I got too much of a curvature, then the wrapper doesn't sit tight up against the wood. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it pretty flat and then drastically drop it at the end. So let's go ahead and take care of this other side. It's looking kind of cool so far. So because it's so many little pieces all glued together, and it can be really brittle, I'm taking it really slow with the carbide tip blade. If this were a softwood or a hardwood, I could take this chisel and I could just go to town on it and be done in like 30 seconds. On this I want to take it really slow and take care not to cause it to just shatter and blow up and have everything come off of the brass tube. And you'll also notice that I work from the end in, and then I work from this end in. I'll work this side in, and then I'll work this side in, because the weakest point on the blank is on the edges. And you can see I'm not making much progress because there's so many stones. These turquoise stones are really hard. They're large pieces, so it's pretty hard to get in there. So I'm going to hit my chisel on the grinder one more time and get a really good sharp edge on it. Give me another sharp edge. Now we're we're starting to get something that resembles a pin. Always keep your tools sharp. Okay, this is looking like a crazy looking pin. Now, let's continue to fill the gaps. I'm going to take some of the glue out of this area here. Just going to chisel a little bit of this glue off the brass tube. Make room for some more material, because you want it nice and tight up against that bushing. That's good. Everything else is really good. And we go back to filling it again. I'm not going to fill all of these holes because some of them I'm going to put more turquoise in it. I'm just going to get some of the larger areas and I'm going to fill the smaller areas with turquoise. I don't want to overwhelm the pin with so much turquoise. You can always have a little too much of a good thing. To me, it's important to have a pin that is proportionate in size. I see some pin makers make these huge bottom portions of the pin and smaller tops, or they'll make all kinds of weird shapes on their pins and things like that. That's just simply not my style. I prefer that the lower portion be the size of or smaller than the upper portion. By the time I get the cigar band on this one, it's going to be a little larger. So I think we're really good here. I was trying to bring it down a little bit smaller, and I think I'm at a pretty good size right now, so it'll be a real nice size pin to work with. Now, what I need to do is get some turquoise to fill all these little gaps, and you'll notice there's some large gaps, some little small gaps, so I'm going to need a variety of sizes, so I'm going to have to crush up some of that turquoise into smaller granules. So let's go ahead and get a hammer and start chopping away.
A few inches later.
Now I have some very fine dust. I've got some small granules, and if I work it just right, I can kind of separate it where I got medium size here I can use, and then large ones over here. So, kind of like panning for gold. That'll work great. So let's go back over there and finish the pin. Sorry about that, guys. In the Army, we call that a beer leg. We set up the tripods. I was a construction surveyor, so I had survey equipment that was on tripods. And as you set up the tripods, if you set it up in a way that you had to straddle one of the legs, one of the three legs, they call that a beer leg. And that's not a good thing. It meant you had to buy the beer after work. One thing we tried to learn was not to set up the legs so that you bumped it, because when you're talking about, you know, really very tight tolerances on measurements, one bump of that tripod sets everything off and you got to start all over again. Nowadays, it's all satellite, it's electronic, and you don't really have to worry too much about that kind of stuff. Of course, I've been out of survey for quite a long time, so I don't know the half of what they do now. You can see I'm getting super glue all over my fingers, but I can't do this portion with gloves on because you have to be able to feel the detail of the stones as you drop them into the little gaps. So I just let the super glue get on my hands and scrub it off later. What I see here is a little hole that goes down to the brass tube, and you can see the brass underneath, and it's got glue filled all the way into the top, and to me it's not very desirable to see the brass underneath, so I just dig out a little bit of that glue and let's fill it with turquoise. I could get a razor knife and kind of dig that out a little bit, or I could just use something to punch it with. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some very fine stuff to fill that. So we're going to take all of this tiny material. That ought to cover it. Let's make one more pass. Looks pretty good to me. Let's smooth this out. Okay, so I've got quite a few gaps and gouges, and what I'm going to do is just go ahead and fill that in with some extra material, something that's similar in color. This stuff is usually the best. Just fill it in from this scrap material from what I turned down earlier. See a lot of brass right through there, so I'm going to chisel that out. Pretty good area here that needs to be filled in. Now, this area I'm not real concerned about because it's going to be covered up by a cigar wrapper. And if you ever wonder why my hands are so coarse, it's because I use sandpaper to get this super glue off of my finger. This is a 60 grit sandpaper. Takes it off nicely. Looks like that's pretty dry. Let's give it a good once over. Got some 100 grit paper here. Starting to come together with quite a bit of character. See a little brass tube right down through here. Let's try to chisel a little bit of that out. As you can see, all of the work I've been doing on it has made this blank harder and harder and harder. I can hardly get the knife through it anymore. It's so hard. You get so much of that glue built up in there, and on top of that the wood is really hard to begin with because it's been through the vacuum chamber process, and so it's a very dense material. And let's see if there's any other areas where I might see the brass coming through. I see a lot in this area, so I'm going to take all of this out. I know some of you guys probably think I'm crazy. This is just taking way too long, but it's really rewarding in the end. Once you get the finished product, people really appreciate the design. I'm going to contrast some of this turquoise with a little black. So what I've done is on previous pins that I've made, when I use the wood, I'll keep some of the shavings. These are some different color shavings from pins that I've done previously. We've got some blacks and some reds and purples and browns, and I even have some blue. So I just collect the shavings off of the lathe when I'm done. Okay, so I got some black here. I'm going to contrast this turquoise in here with a little black. Kind of bring it out a little bit. Okay, I think we're ready for our first coat of CA glue. Alright, so here we go. We're going to do a buildup of CA glue. I'll just put it on my Q-tip until I get a drip, and we're going to go around it once here. The first coat, you just want to get it on liberally. Give it a nice coat here. Okay, I see a couple areas where the brass tube is shining through. So just as soon as this dries, I'm going to dig those out and we're going to refill them. And you can see the smoke coming off of it's a good indication that it's hardening pretty quick. And so now it's dry. See, it's completely dry. Alright, so let's go ahead and dig out some of these areas where I can see the brass tube through. And we're going to fill them in with a little black. There's another spot. That one's got a real nice little twig in there. I want to try to avoid damaging that twig because I like it. It looks kind of cool. There we go. That's excellent. We have an area where it looks like it picked up a lot of the dye and resin. Alright, now down here. Okay, looks like I got it all. Let's go ahead and fill that in with black. Give it some more color. go ahead and sand this all off and clean it up.